croaky, so I'm sorry, but I'm not going to be speaking much, so it's not a problem. Thank you very much for coming to the Vice Senior Man Hustings, which will be followed by welfare. Hopefully we'll wrap this up within the 30 to 40 minutes, so we won't be here too long. As with last week, all questions to both candidates, nothing individual or personal, so, but you're all aware of that anyway, so it's not a big issue. So yeah, we'll get this show on the road. Last night I sent the boys a question for them to prepare an answer to for today, and that question was, do you see the Vice Senior Man as a JCR Secretary or Vice President, and how would you adapt the role accordingly? So Ed signed up first, so we'll begin with Ed's answer.
Brilliant. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you all for coming tonight. It means a lot to me that you all take an interest in JCR politics. I think it's very important. So the question, do I see the role of Vice Senior Man as more of a Vice President or a Secretary? I don't think the question is as simple to answer as that. I think it has to be broken down, and you have to acknowledge that actually it's both. You're kind of a figurehead and a Vice President, but at the same time you are kind of running a lot of the background stuff in the JCR, so in that regard you are a Secretary. However, I think we need to kind of question our understanding of the word Secretary. There's a lot of connotations that go with that role that kind of certainly don't fit in with the role of Vice Senior Man. So what do I mean by that? Well, at the moment, so David and Jenny have a very close relationship. A lot of the work they do is with each other. So there's kind of... that's a lot of that is David kind of hammering on... that's the wrong verb. A lot of that is David really chasing Jenny up and saying, Jenny, look, why haven't you done that? So I would say rather than kind of seeing the role as a secretary, I don't know if any of you watched The Thick of It, but I'd see the role of Vice Senior Man as more like Malcolm from The Thick of It. So Simon knows what I mean. So by that, it's really chasing that person up and saying, look, why haven't you done that? The role of Vice Senior Man needs to be holding the exec to account and then communicating across why those people are doing those jobs. So in that regard, there is a lot of admin, there's a lot of what you could deem secretarial work, but at the same time, it's a lot of being much more vocal than just sitting behind a desk and kind of asking people for opinions. The Vice President aspect of the role is, okay, obviously, say next year if Simon is unable to attend a JCR meeting, or he is unable to go to President's Committee, it's the job of the Vice Senior Man to step up and fill in there. So that's something I'd be more than happy to do. But also more than that, it's not just a token figurehead role. I think it's very important that the Vice Senior Man is able to stand up to the Senior Man in particular, and also the rest of the exec, and say, actually, I don't really agree with what you've said there. So in that regard, it is more of a kind of Vice President role, in that you have your own opinion and you need to be able to state it. So that's all I've got to say on that point, really. The second part of the question actually was, how would I adapt that role for the future? I know this is something David said in his hustings last year, but I don't think it's been done to the best of what it could be yet. I think the role needs to be a lot more visible. It's not so much, it's not a problem when people don't know who you are. If anything, that's probably good for certain people's egos. But I think it becomes a problem when when a member of the JCR has an issue and they don't know who to go to complain about it, and they'll say, why is this happening? So I think the Vice Senior Man needs to be much more visible and approachable, and that's hopefully something I'll get to cover later on in hustings. So thanks very much.
Okay, so like Ed, I'd also like to thank you all for showing up. It's very nice to see a lot of friendly faces in the crowd. That'll hopefully make this a bit easier. But the question was about whether VSM is a vice presidential role or a secretarial role. And I think it would be a great disservice to Woody and to Andy Hudson and to Benson and to other previous VSMs to say that it's one or the other, because it's not. It's a combination of the two. I did a lot of research about the question, well, a lot, 24 hours worth of research to the question. I looked up Trev's JCR, Cuth's JCR, and listened to Woody's own response to the question. And the vice president of other colleges, they do a lot of interacting with the JCR, which falls under the domain of the VSM. The secretaries organise the meetings and do the minutes, which also falls under the role of the VSM. So it has to be a combination of the both, and I think that's really good that we do that. As for how I would adapt the role. I think there's always two ways to approach any role on the exec. I think you can try to be a bombastic revolutionary and tear down the Constitution and build it up again in your own image to leave a legacy or anything like that. But I'm not that guy. I think if there are good things, you keep them the way they are. If there are things that don't work so well, you can adjust them. And I think the way the VSM position works is that it has a colossal responsibility to the JCR. Sorry, pardon me. Because it's so far-reaching, has so many different facets to it. But I think that's a really good thing.
Okay, any questions? Who'd like to start us off? Yep. Colonel.
The vice senior man is responsible for communicating the views of the exec and the policies of the exec to the rest of the JCR. And you mightn't necessarily agree with that, or you might actually oppose it. So how would you feel about communicating such ideas to the JCR? Have you had experience with this in the past?
Does it mean to go first?
Yeah, Anthony, you go first.
Okay, so ideas that I don't agree with. Well, I think obviously the exec is, and the VSM role is, it's a team within a team within a team. You've got the JCR are all working together, the exec are all working together, and the VSM and the senior man are working together as well. And you've got to work through your decisions. You can't have people all pulling in different directions. You're strongest all together. One twig on its own is easily broken. A bundle is much stronger. I think that if a decision is to be made, I think the exec will work together to agree on something and come to the best conclusion for the JCR. If there was something that I strongly opposed, but everyone else thought was the better idea, I'd probably say that they would be right. I couldn't see myself being, I mean, some people who know me might disagree with this, being so unbelievably stubborn that I would go against it. But I think I would be happy to promote an idea if it's for the benefit of the JCR and the college as a whole.
So I think that question has two parts. First of all, you've got how do you reconcile different ideas? And then secondly, how do you communicate those ideas and decisions? So I'll start with the kind of the first part. I actually disagree with Anthony on this point. I don't think that the exec is strongest as a whole, where there's one single exec line. I think obviously there's certain instances where it's very important to go into a meeting with a consensus, and so that the exec can say, okay, well, you know, you've kind of got one opinion amongst you which you can kind of hopefully work towards. But I don't think it should be any more than a consensus. And what I mean by that is it shouldn't be something set in stone. It should be something that is adaptable. You might say, okay, well, how's it going to work then if you've got the senior man standing up and saying one thing and then another member of the exec kind of mouthing off at the other end of the table? I actually think that could be quite a positive thing, obviously within reason and within order. But I think at JCR meetings, it would be great if, for next year, if Simon could stand up and say, look, we've discussed this as an exec, and this is what we think. Our opinions aren't entirely united. For example, Joe Bloggs as sponsorship and liaison officer thinks this, and then give that person the opportunity to speak. I think that's really important. I think what we need to do on the exec is realise that we're working for an incredibly bright bunch of people, that being the JCR, that being you guys, and we need to realise that actually the JCR is full of very rational, intelligent individuals who, if you present them with both sides of the argument, will be able to weigh up what they believe in more and hopefully come to a well-reasoned and balanced decision that will ultimately be in the interest of the JCR. And I certainly think that would do wonders for college life and certainly for exec accountability and approachability. The second point I said this was about was communication. Obviously, a huge amount of emails are sent by the vice senior man, which is excellent in one way. It puts the information across. However, I think we need, communication-wise, we need to be much more kind of creative about how we go about it. So I'd really like to kind of revolutionise the JCR's communication on a kind of technological level. So I think there's much more scope for involvement with social media. I don't mean just another Facebook page, because there's so many of them already. But I think we've got some very bright people in here. Our computer officer is exceptionally skilled with computers. And I think there's the scope to build a JCR Facebook app, and that's certainly something that would run well with the new website, whereby there'd be much more passive on-take of information rather than people having to filter through emails. I also think there's the possibilities to build an iPhone or Android Facebook app and kind of disseminate information in a way that is, we do it for everything else, why shouldn't we do it for the JCR for something that really matters to us? So to summarise, I think, yeah, we need to reconcile strong opinions on the exec, and then we need to present them to the JCR in an effective way, which is appropriate to them.
Any more questions? No.
Yeah. If you don't get vice senior man, would you go for any other position on the exec, and if so, why?
No, I wouldn't. Vice Senior Man is what I'm interested in. It's a role which I think I'd really enjoy, and I think I'd be very useful to the JCR in that role. I don't see the skill set I have being particularly transferable to another role. I think this is what I'd be good at, and that's why I'm campaigning passionately to hopefully be elected to this position.
Okay, well, if not elected, I hope people don't think this means I'm any less serious about running for Vice Senior Man. I have been doing a lot of thinking about running for the position of Unions and Societies Officer. As a lot of you know, I'm really involved in college sport. I play 4 at the moment. So I have a good knowledge and understanding of how the sports currently work in college, and an idea of how to get more people involved. I mean, lacrosse this year we've done really fantastically well to get loads of people into the club, and then we're top of the league and unbeaten. So it's something I would consider, but whether I do or not, I'd still be looking to be really involved in the college and what we do and who we are.
Yeah, Nick.
Why did you choose both the Vice Senior Man and not Senior Man?
The way I see it, the Vice Senior Man role and the Senior Man role are very different. The Senior Man role is a role that relates the college to the university and looks upwards and outwards and tries to work on university policy and things. And the Vice Senior Man role relates the exec to the JCR and the JCR to itself. And that's what I'm really interested in. I'm interested in the people of the JCR and keeping them informed of what's going on, how people can be more involved in college life, sports, societies, whatever people want to do. I think we've got a great opportunity to do so many things at university, which is something you probably won't get again. And that's what I care about. I care about the JCR more than relating to the Vice-Chancellor of the university.
Okay, so I agree with Anthony that the roles are very distinct and very different and require very different people to do them. So the role of Senior Man is something that requires kind of great kind of rhetorical scope and a lot of space for big ideas like Simon mentioned, like diversity and that sort of thing, which I think I'm very happy that we've elected Simon. He's the sort of person who can do that and present those ideas and inspire people. The Vice Senior Man, however, I think is someone who perhaps, obviously there needs to be a public face, but it's someone who kind of is happy to get stuff done in the background and make kind of on-the-spot decisions and snappy decisions about how things should run. And also, the Senior Man is the kind of the ideas man and the person at the top, but I think it's very important to have someone who can hold that person to account, rein them in a bit and say, okay, that passion is excellent, that passion is great, but is it going to be just words, or how do you think you can direct that? So that's why I think I'd be good at this role. That's something that I'm interested in. And also, I think, you know, as well, the role of Vice Senior Man is a lot of admin, a lot of sending emails, a lot of making sure stuff gets done. I think that's something I have the experience to do. This year, in my role as JCR Vice Chairman, I've had to sit on a lot of meetings and committees to make sure things are discussed fairly, which I think is very important. So I think that's something I could bring to the role. I've also this year been just something slightly different. I've been a Microsoft Windows Student Ambassador, and you might think, oh well, don't just drop that in there. Well, how's that relevant? But part of that role is to do with setting up local partnerships and agreements with societies and clubs. So most recently, I've had a proposal ratified by Microsoft between Windows and UCBC, and in that role, so I've secured UCBC £972 worth of funding. But to get that done, I had to go back over UCBC's accounts from the last 4 or 5 years, look at what purchases they needed to make and why, and then not just that, but then condense that down into a proposal which was usable to Microsoft and which they thought was reasonable and that they could support. So that's another part that I think would be good at in the role.
predict.
How do you intend to combat apathy next year if you were to be elected?
I think a big kind of stumbling block in the way of the JCR at the moment is exec accountability, transparency and approachability. And I think that does a lot to kind of fuel the fires of apathy. I know this is an issue which some second and third, fourth years will realise is campaigned on every year, exec, when we need to make the exec more approachable. So how do I think I could do that? Well, I've just got a few very simple ideas. The first one being, I think, would be what I'd call a fortnightly plan. So I'd look to interview each member of the exec, just very briefly, every couple of weeks, and sort of say to them, okay, look, Simon, as senior man, what are you hoping to achieve over the next 2 weeks and why? How is that how is that going to benefit the JCR and why, or is it more of a kind of a personal ambition? And then be able to condense that down into just 1 or 2 lines of text, just very, very short, say, over the next 2 weeks, Simon Gallo will be hoping to achieve this. Then get that out to the JCR through the various forms of communication, which I mentioned earlier, and kind of make them aware of the changes that are likely to happen in the future. And kind of, hopefully, not only would it kind of make people aware, and they'd kind of, ooh, yeah, I quite like that idea, I'm going to try and push for that a bit more. But it would also get the kind of the face of the exec out there more, which would mean that if there's something that's gone wrong, people would know who to kind of approach and say, look, why hasn't that happened? And as well, I think it would mean the exec would have to work a lot harder to gain the approval of the JCR. At the moment, some people would argue that, okay, we put a lot of effort in now going around like knocking on people's doors saying, vote for me, vote for me. But then come tomorrow night, people could say, well, that's that, you know, you've got the public approval, why bother? And I think having a scheme like that where people know what you're doing, know who you are and why you're doing it, I think people would have a lot more interest, and that would be one thing to combat apathy. I also think the exec needs to be a lot easier to get hold of. So I don't think something like an exec drop-in session would work because no one would go. But say at the moment the MD opens at 7, no one comes until 8. So maybe once a week the exec could get here at 7:45. There could be free soft drinks available, or grab a pint with the exec, just have a chat and say, look, I think this needs to change or that needs to change. And I think little things like that, it needs to be coming from the exec rather than from the JCR. The exec needs to work a lot harder to satisfy the JCR. The exec should be working for the JCR, and if anything, the exec should be scared of the JCR rather than the other way around. The JCR should not fear the exec. The exec have to work for the JCR, and they have to work a lot harder.
Okay, so that's a very good and important question, because if there's one thing you learn when canvassing, is that there's a lot of people who care very strongly about the JCR, and there are a lot of people who couldn't care less. I think what I try to put across when canvassing is how much I care about the JCR. So I disagree with Ed, and I think that exec drop-in session, I mean, they've got the open door policy at the moment, but what I learned from talking to the exec is that that is absolutely never used, because it's up on the Norman Gallery. Going up to the Norman Gallery is very intimidating. Standing up in a JCR meeting and putting your view across is also quite intimidating, especially if you're a fresher and you've got third years making all the points, or he's not here anymore, but Dom Daly, just answering every question. So my second point in my manifesto was the exec contact hours, and the way I put this across was casual meetings in places like the West Courtyard, where you can come and beat me at the pool, or small meetings in Moatside Kitchens or the Owen Gate Common Room, where you've just got a couple members of the exec, say we'll be there for half an hour, come talk about whatever you want. And it's a similar idea to Ed's meeting in the Undie, in a really relaxed, informal setting where views are much more easily passed around. The other thing that wasn't on my manifesto, but I did try to put across to as many people as possible, was that I would like to go around and talk to every fresher during the start of the year. Probably not during Freshers Week, because they might not remember, but the following 2 or 3 weeks, go around and kind of introduce myself, say personally, hi, this is who I am, this is what I do. It's in my job to relate you to your exec, and these are the exec, this is what they do. I interviewed, well, I didn't interview, I canvassed a few people and asked them what they do if a pool cue was broken, for instance. And they didn't know that they'd need to speak to Jimmy, which is something I think people should know. And I think that falls under the jurisdiction of the VSM, and that's something I would do. And if you're making the personal effort to talk to 250, 300 freshers, I think that'll really fight apathy. If people know that you care about them, they're much more likely to care about you.
How has the experience which you listed on your manifesto enhanced your understanding of the inner workings of the JCR?
Okay, so my first 2 points on my experience were that I'm captain of lacrosse and captain of cricket. So both of those have meant I've had to spend quite a lot of time organising groups of people, sending a lot of emails, quite a few lacrosse players here, so probably know that I send too many of those. So that's kind of got me to know a lot of people in the JCR, which I think is important, as I just said, to the role of the VSM. And sending emails is, again, a major facet of what the VSM does. Listed hockey and football, being a part of lots of clubs and societies in the JCR, I think, is extremely important. And again, gives you more of a knowledge of who's in the JCR. The only way to make sure you can be representative of the JCR is knowing who they are and what they think and what they do. And then the last 2 points in my experience didn't really have anything to do with it, but I was quite proud of them, so I put them on.
So, firstly, I think the role of Vice Senior Man requires a very in-depth knowledge of the inner workings of the JCR. So I think I know I've started to build that knowledge basis by this year. I've been in the position of JCR Vice Chairman, so that's a lot of sitting on various committees. So on the Standing Orders Committee, I've had to fill in and sit on the UCRAC Committee. So all those different aspects of college life. However, that doesn't really equip you for the organisational side of things. So what have I got that kind of fills in that gap? Okay, so this year I've also been the Deputy Head of the Security Committee. In that role, I've done a lot of kind of sorting out shifts. I ran the security for Ladies' Night and made sure people knew where they were. I've also just completed the security stash order. So lots of little kind of admin-y things, but actually kind of really help hone your organisational skills. As I mentioned earlier, kind of the Microsoft Windows thing. That's something I've put a lot of time into and a lot of effort, and kind of built up my analytical skills to go through things and actually pull out why stuff is important, but then repackage that into a format which not only I find interesting, but other people find interesting. I think that's a very important aspect of the job. Other experience, I think, as I said earlier, the kind of Vice Senior Man needs to kind of have a much more public face and kind of keep doing those things that normal students do. Keep, like, I don't know, playing sport or whatever. So on that respect, this year I've taken up rowing. It's something I've really enjoyed, and it just means that I've been out there kind of chatting to people, kind of enjoying myself, but at the same time like doing something for college that isn't necessarily in a kind of admin level. I think that's something definitely I would continue to do next year as well. So that's the experience I have, and that's why I think I'd be good at this job.
One of the highlights of my week this year has been reading the profound thought and joke in Woody's emails he sent out. So can both of you tell us your favourite sort of profound quote and also tell us a joke, please?
Okay. I think my favourite profound quote is give a man a fish and it'll feed him for a day. Give him a net and he'll feed himself for life. So I think that's quite inspiring. I think it's something that a lot of us could learn from. We're very quick to kind of say, oh, well, this isn't working. Oh, what are they going to do about it? Rather than actually thinking for ourselves and kind of going out and fixing something, which quite often, a lot of people who have got practical experience, that's something they can do. Jokes-wise, I'm not very good at on-the-spot jokes. I like to think if something, well, usually people laugh at me, not with me. But I'll go for the classic, why did the Mexican push his wife off a cliff? Tequila!
Okay, so as people who know me would know, I love quotations and things like that. So I've got a bunch I could pick from for inspiring things to say. There's a line from Faust, which I quite like, which goes in Latin, so forgive my pronunciation, I haven't done Latin since I'm like 12, but vi vere veniversum vivus vici, which roughly translate to I, while living by the power of truth, have conquered the universe, which is, I think, a very important message. So it kind of shows the importance of being honest with people and yourself, and I think that's a very good thing. For jokes, so I've got a couple that work together, and then I've got the one about the noise the gay shark makes when it comes to attack. You heard that one before?
Oh, go on, Callum.
Da 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 da. Da 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 da, and it goes on.
PJ.
Do you have a critique of the current VSM in 5 words?
Only 5?
I want to come up with something really laconic and good, but it takes more than 10 seconds to. My 5 words or less, was it? Could it be less? Not approachable enough. Nothing against Woody, very nice guy, but can be quite intimidating to talk to if you don't know him. When you get to know him, very nice person, but 6'2" and quite.
Can't believe his height.
I'd probably go friend zone, you know, a lot of people, and and should drink less.
That's a serious problem. Robbie?
What is your opinion on the current room ballot procedure, and particularly how it might affect potential exec
Can you repeat the last bit, sorry?
particularly how it might affect potential exec candidates?
Okay, I think the room ballot procedure is something that was dealt with last year in a lot of detail. Ultimately, I don't really think there's a huge amount more we can do with it. And I think as VSM, if I were elected, kind of my energy and my passion would be much better directed at things we've actually got a chance of changing. So as a motive and issue, as the room ballot is, I think it needs to be something that obviously we still care about. We still kind of talk people through the process, but I don't think it's something we should really we can feasibly really seek to change. I think instead it needs to be something, you know, as we've talked about a lot tonight, the communication and the information. That's the role. That's the kind of the spin I put on it. I want people to have all the information there, so they knew what would happen and they knew kind of what sort of the chances were of them getting on. With regards to exec positions, I do think there's probably a few people in second year at the moment who were maybe put off running for exec because they weren't sure of their accommodation situation. That's not ideal in any way, shape or form. You know, we need kind of. It's great if more people run for roles, and certainly, and I know there's people in our year who'd be excellent on the exec, but it's kind of reconciling those two arguments. I don't think it's feasible to reserve maybe 4 rooms for each exec candidate, because then you're getting, you know, that's a lot of rooms gone. I think, you know, there's discussions we could have. I know it's something that you've probably got a lot of good ideas on. I personally don't have an answer at the moment. I think we need to have kind of focus groups on that and a lot more talking, but at the same time, I'm not going to pledge to fix it, because I don't think, you know, it can be fixed. I think it's a problem that needs to be accepted and dealt with in terms of kind of just really telling people what the issue is. So that's all I've got to say on that, really.
I don't think there's a perfect answer to this question, and I'm not going to pretend that I have one. I was very fortunate to come quite high on the room ballot, but it didn't affect my opinion of running for a role, and I think the people who are seriously committed to wanting to run for their role will do it regardless of the situation. Obviously, it does lead to difficulties. If your election isn't happening till now, you don't know whether you have that place in or not. But like Ed said, there's been a lot of discussion about this in recent weeks at the JCR meeting. I know you've been very vocal and kind of had a lot of ideas on this, which I think is important. But I personally don't have the answers. It's something I'd need to discuss again with the JCR. I mean, the exec have been going through the feedback from those questionnaires significantly, from what I've been hearing, and there are lots of ideas, but I can't tell you what the right answer is at the moment. Sorry.
Yeah, flick again.
Can you express your role using interpretive dance?
It is my turn to go first. The answer is probably no, but I'll try. I don't think I can do a head spin. Never tried though. I don't know. I suppose.
Okay, well, those of you that know me know that I'm awful at dancing. And it usually takes me 1 or 2 shandies to kind of... some of you might be aware of my trademark move when I've been... It's happened in Lloyd's, it's happened in Clute, is the worm on the floor. So why do I think that's relevant to this role? Well, I think, as I've said, VSM really needs to kind of show that they can get involved with the people, and how more can you do that than by getting on the floor as a worm? So I'll try that for you now. I can't make any promises it's going to be good.
On stage.
I'm too far.
Diagonal.
Yeah, James.
That was wonderful. I think you're helping to express through song.
You have to
Sit down for yourself.
stand up to work the diaphragm.
Okay, my singing as well is diabolical. A song that kind of goes well with the role. Can I make any tenuous, cheesy links? I'm going to go with Waka Waka by Shakira. I think there's a lot of lessons we could learn from that song. Sometimes in JCR politics you take a knock, but actually you kind of think, oh well, that's that issue done and dusted with. But really, you need to be a good soldier and get back in your saddle. So I'm going to not use the microphone for this because it'll probably deafen lots of you. And when I say sing, that's a very loose kind of term. It's probably going to be a bit of a croak. But I'll go for it. You're a good soldier, choosing your path. Conduct yourself, back in your saddle. You're on the front line, everyone's watching. You know it's here, you know the rest of those
People who know me know that I like to sing, and also know that I don't sing very well. But probably shaking hands there. Thanks. I'd probably go with some classic British music, some Beatles. I should put a bet on it. What would you do if I sang out of tune? Would you get up and walk out on me? Lend me your ears and I'll sing you a song, and I'll try not to sing out of key. Oh, I get by with a little help from my friends. I get high with a little help from my friends. Gonna try with a little help from my friends. And it's extremely relevant to the role.
Yep.
What's the worst thing I've done to any of my housemates? Oh God, I don't know. Well, luckily none of them are here, so. Sympathy vote. What's the worst thing I've done with my housemates? One of my housemates gets really annoyed when I leave my sports kit kind of lying in the corridor. Gets very annoyed when I've got a cricket bag in his way and he wants to come in. I leave some washing up sometimes. Gotta wash up a loose cannon. You don't know what am I going to do next. I don't know what the worst thing I've done to any of my housemates is. Probably my constant singing. Probably the worst thing.
Okay, so all of my housemates are here tonight, bar one. So I'll talk about her. So she disagrees with my use of my bedroom light, being that I don't turn it off every time I leave my room. And she got really annoyed at me for this. And she's like, "Oh, you're killing the planet." And I have, I care about the environment. I watch David Attenborough, things like that. But this was really starting to annoy me. So me and Ed Hawkins, who I live with, calculated how much energy it would use to kind of run my light bulb. So we worked it out, and it wasn't very much. But then she had an electric heater in her room, which was something like 1,500 watts, I think we worked it out. So, a 60-watt light bulb, you do the maths, it's a lot more energy. So I thought, okay, well, she's whinging me at having my light on, but she has her electric heater on. She's using loads of energy. So I went and took the fuse out of it. And left it for about a week. And she had no idea. She phoned her dad up and was like, Dad, my heater's not working. And then she still doesn't, she doesn't know this has happened. So still, this was about a month ago now. And then, a week later I went and put the fuse back in. Everything was back to normal. And she was oblivious. So I think that's probably one of the worst things I've done.
She's not here, but she might watch it online.
That's true. Sorry, Harriet.
Any more? Or we'll wrap it up, I think, at that stage. Those damning stories. Jude, is it a big one?
What is the record Man U score at the moment? Do you want us to guess or look it up? No, predict it. Predict it at the moment? At full time? Now? Was it fucking Van Persie again?
Right, go give us your prediction.
It's your turn to answer first.
Okay, well, as everyone knows, I absolutely love football. I'm going to go. So United, they're British, aren't they? Yeah. So I think it's going to be 3-1 to the ones that aren't British. Pardon? Is that 3-1 final time? As in when full time, yeah, when the whistle's gone. So, yeah, 3-1 to Madrid.
3-1 to Madrid. As an Arsenal fan, I'd really like to see Man U lose, but I'd probably go 2-2 at full time, I guess. Reckon Van Persie will probably score, but Ronaldo will probably score, be a load of drama. Probably everyone will be very excited for a little while and then forget about it.
Drew, what's the score? Right. How long played? Fantastic.
Did Van Persie fucking score?
Got a Van Persie fan here. Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you very much for coming. Give the boys a round of applause.